Okay, everybody. I am broadcasting to all the channels again, but I have had a ton of questions from people. I'm going to start doing these scheduled so you can hit the get reminder button. So, because I've had people, can you please message me when you go live? And I can't because there are so many people. But I've had a lot of the same questions. Oh, there's a lot of loved ones who are either on a ventilator or in the hospital, and there's a lot of questions about the medications and about the therapies that we use. Um, I think the Facebook one is public this time. If not, this is also being broadcast on YouTube. Hey guys, so let me get the YouTube link just in case, because before I had to change it when I got done recording. So let's see here, channel. Sorry guys. Just in case you wanna here follow along on YouTube instead. Some people prefer YouTube, but I'm gonna put the hey, thank you guys. She's really needing it right now. She's having a really hard time. I greatly appreciate that. She did message me that she's in a converse. This is the YouTube link. She did message me that she's talking to another family who is kind of in the same predicament. Really high PEEP, 18 on that ventilator. That's too damn much for this. We don't yeah, I like YouTube as well sometimes. I get the comments through everything on here. Oh, this is our little cabin in Alaska. So we have like a tiny home, a bunkhouse. So it's got like two queen beds and upstairs and downstairs. This is where I'm at for the remainder of the stay. It's kind of crappy out today. We were gonna go hiking to a glacier, but it's yucky. So we're gonna do all that good stuff tomorrow. So this is my Alaskan cabin. We're gonna go enjoy some hiking tomorrow when it's a little bit nicer out and sunny. It's kind of like Washington weather here right now. It's really miserable, rainy. It's not really too bad rainy. It's just kind of overcast. We went to Whittier earlier, tiny little port town. Everybody lives in this one building. It's kind of small. It's no, I'm up here on vacation. I came up to get away from it all, trying to figure out a way to stay. Might come back for work. You never know. You never know with me. But one of the things that I got that a lot of people are getting confused about is the high flow oxygen. There's two numbers that we use. There's the liter flow, which is like the speed that it's being delivered by. And then there's the percentage of oxygen, and we call that the FiO2, or the fraction of inspired oxygen. Room air is 2100%, 100% oxygen. So if you're maxed out on 100%, depending on which high flow device, it can go from 40 to 60 liters max. That's like sticking your head through a wind tunnel to get oxygen delivered. So if you're on that device and you're maxed out, there's really no leeway to go. Sometimes we'll put a non-rebreather on with that if you can maintain your oxygen levels. Some people are wanting, for some reason, they think that 95 and above is what we want with COVID, and we're looking at 88 or greater. On the arterial blood gas, we're looking at a PaO2 of 60 or higher. There is such thing as oxygen toxicity. We really have to be careful with newborn babies. It's very harmful to them, but it can be harmful to big people too, when especially you have to sustain those high levels of oxygen for a long period of time. So when people wonder why we're not giving so much oxygen and their loved ones at 89%, well, because there's harm that can be done with that. We have learned that certain blood levels are ideal with this, and we do target them. So we're trying not to blow your loved one's lungs out with too much PEEP. Unfortunately, Laredo seems to like those high PEEP strategies, and that's not what we recommend with this. This is not regular ARDS. We really haven't been using a lot of bilevel, which is another mode of ventilation that we would normally use with ARDS. It's not shown any clinical benefit with this. Um, so that's one of the reasons why we're not using it. What I'm also seeing a huge fight to use is pressure control ventilation. We like to keep our means and our peak pressures below a certain level. And when they start getting to that level, we really need to start using pressure control. And some of these doctors are not using it. And this is where lung injury happens. Yeah, kept, and they're real sensitive to those tiny liter flows of oxygen. With babies, you have like a quarter liters and half liters. With the big people, they don't like to leave their oxygen in either. Um, what I'm seeing a lot of problems with our loved ones is they're being it's almost like a prison sentence because you can't leave your room. You can't go out and roam the hospital. There's no group area for COVID patients to interact and have some kind of socialization. A lot of these patients are in the hospital 30 to 45 days, and that's not even on a ventilator. Some of these are admitted that long. It takes nothing happens quickly with COVID. And I know it is so hard as a family member to sit there and especially in Jesse's case, they're not even giving her numbers to watch, but in some cases, that's all you have. And you're hoping for some change. And with COVID, we can make adjustments throughout the day. We'll have a drastic step forward. Nighttime comes, and we're right back to where we were. So I know that we look for these little changes, but nothing happens quickly with this. Nothing happens quickly. And a lot of it is time. It takes time. And it might look like things are going well or that the doctors aren't telling you much, but it's because it quite literally changes day by day and minute by minute, and nothing happens quickly. Resolution of the inflammation takes so long. A lot of people have asked why we don't have a lot of x-rays that are being done because there's really no changes on x-rays for weeks. I got into a fight with a doctor in Georgia. He wanted to keep the patient in the hospital because there was no change on the x-ray. Patient's on 1 liter of oxygen, ready to go home, and he's trying to fix a blood gas that you can't fix because the guy's a chronic problem. He's going to cause some more problems. And I'm like, you're gonna keep him in the hospital. You know, he's ready to go home. You're gonna make him more sick with something else because you're waiting for a change on an X-ray. So a lot of these doctors, I honestly, they're trying to treat this as regular ARDS, which is what we learned in the beginning was not the answer. A great resource was mcrit.org. I'll type it here in the comments. Um, MCRIT was the emergency medicine. One of the doctors out in Dr. Scott Weingand, I believe. He's out at Elmhurst. And then there's also a PalmCrit. If you want information on strategies on how we're supposed to be managing this and what we've learned from all over the world, these are your guys. And why more of their information has not been being followed from the beginning, I do not understand. But would you say that most are admitted to a hospital because of breathing? Yes. Yes. That's one of the number. I mean, that's honestly the main complaint for people coming into the hospital is they can't breathe. There's the silent hypoxemics, which is the ones that really don't look hypoxic. They come in walking, talking, breathing, and I've had to sit there and talk to these people. I had drawn this guy's blood one of my last nights at the hospital this last week, and he was wanting to go home. He felt fine. He felt fine. I drew his blood, and his PaO2 was 58. And I'm like, you're not fine, dude. You're going to walk out to the parking lot and pass out. So don't just get up and leave because you feel good with this, because there's the silent, it's honestly like the silent killer. And it does sneak up on people. And if you check yourself out AMA and you waited a long time to get a hospital room, you're not going to be brought back to that hospital room. You have to go back through the ER. Hypoxic is low oxygen. It's hypoxemia is low oxygen levels in the blood. That's when you see people that start to turn blue in the lips. The nail beds will change colors. Normally, we don't like to see people below 92, but with this, 88 is where we're happy to see people at. And that's usually what we like people with COPD at, 88 to 92. And those are the ones who are chronic retainers of carbon dioxide that they no longer breathe off their oxygen levels, they breathe off their carbon dioxide levels. Normally, your body is driving off of its oxygen levels, but with people with COPD, they have a chronic buildup of carbon dioxide, so the body changes how it balances its pH. So we use that high flow nasal cannula, and we tried with the high flow, we like to jack it up and give you 100% first. I like to back the leader flow down first, because that leader flow, for every 10 centimeters of leader flow, you get 1 centimeter of PEEP. So it helps to stent the airways open for people, especially with the COPDers. That's what that was originally made for, was for my chronic respiratory failure patients to have some heat and moisture, because a lot of people don't realize that the job of your nose is to heat and moisturize the incoming air. It is not to smell things. It is your natural heat and moisturizer for your air. So oxygen is a very, very dry gas. There is no moisture in it. So when you're blowing a lot of oxygen up there, you are drying out the airways and irritating them. So that high flow oxygen is a major benefit. Now, a lot of doctors use BiPAP wrong. BiPAP is for respiratory failure, CO2 buildup, or difficulty breathing, and they need that support, like with congestive heart failure. A lot of doctors use it for oxygenation. You do not need, the problem with BiPAP is you have to set a rate. So that machine is driving a set rate of breaths into a patient to help support their breathing. Well, if the patient can support their breathing, you are stuffing them full of air and making them nauseous. I've had a lot of patients who had no problems with breathing have a lot of problems with being really nauseated, because they're having these huge volumes of air and this rate stuffed into them that they don't need. CPAP is fine for people like that. That's just the PEEP. And that's through a mask. It's non-invasive ventilation. But with the CPAP, it just holds the airways open and allows you to oxygenate, and you don't have this huge volume of air being stuffed into your belly through this mask that's highly uncomfortable. Now, if folks are having a buildup of carbon dioxide and they're going into respiratory failure, that would be an indication for BiPAP. But instead, they go right to BiPAP thinking that that's the answer. And if they're supporting their breathing just fine, CPAP is probably going to be more comfortable. I would progress to BiPAP if the rate's getting too fast. But these folks are going to breathe at a higher respiratory rate anyway. Their lungs are stiff. It's what we call non-compliant, which is why a ton of PEEP is not good. And the ventilator tells you how compliant the lungs are. So the stiffer the lung, you should not be packing a ton of PEEP in there. And not everybody has these stiff lungs. I have very rarely seen a PEEP above 15 throughout all of this. In the very beginning, we did, and we realized that we were causing a lot of harm, and we backed off on that before I even went to Laredo. So when I got to Laredo last year and I seen all these high PEEPs, I knew that's the strategy that we were backing off from, and to hear that they're still using it tells me that these doctors are not up to date on any of their info. We do not use a high PEEP with this. This is not regular ARDS. It's actually referred to as COVID ARDS, and it will be having its own section in our respiratory Bible and every other thing that we use. Another thing is, when you're looking at those ventilator numbers, you have certain ventilators are set up a different way. So if you're looking at numbers, those very well might be what we're getting back from the patient and not what the actual ventilator settings are. Most of them are using a PRVC, which is a pressure regulated volume control. So you're going to get this volume delivery of air, but it's regulated by the pressure of the alarm. So it will cut off a volume of air being delivered if the patient is asynchronous with the vent. And what I mean by asynchronous is they're bucking the ventilator, they're fighting that vent. So we call that a breath stacking. A lot of the nurses call respiratory, wanting us to fix it, and very, very rarely is it a respiratory thing that we can fix. It's a sedation issue. The patient is not sedated enough. So if you keep hearing your nurse tell you that your loved one is fighting the vent, a paralytic is usually in order. We have a lot of patients who are on propofol, Versed, fentanyl, and we still have to hit them with rock. Sometimes we will just a bolus them with it. Other times they will be on a drip temporarily just to get the body to calm down. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes your loved one just needs to rest, because the more they fight that ventilator, the more they are consuming the oxygen that's available to their blood, which is very little with this, because your body is fighting this inflammatory process that impairs the body's ability to oxygenate. So fighting the ventilator and using up all this extra oxygen and creating more carbon dioxide that your body can't get rid of is not a good thing. So to be hit with a paralytic once in a while just to relax them is not a bad thing. You're not supposed to, let me rephrase this. You're not supposed to be restraining people who are on BiPAP. So if they require restraints, they should not be on BiPAP, because they have to be able to pull off the mask. If they vomit while on that mask, it goes right down the airway. I just had a question. What is the best way to sign up for a clinical trial? You're going to have to look and see like what clinical trials are available. There are some websites that you can type in what your symptoms are, and if there's a clinical trial for what you're looking for. You just kind of have to go to the manufacturer's page to see if what's available for your condition. Not all clinical trials are a good thing, and you should be compensated and paid for your participation in a clinical trial, unlike this gigantic jab trial. So keep that in mind. We are one free science experiment right now. But a lot of the medications, there's folks that are asking about remdesivir. Now, remdesivir is not a WHO approved drug. It is not shown to improve outcomes. When they got to the end of the trial, that they thought that the p-value in the middle, when they analyzed it, looked like people were getting discharged earlier. That was not the case when they finished the study. Therefore, the WHO did not recommend that that be part of the treatment. However, we are giving 1 to 2 courses of it. It's highly damaging to the kidneys. And it's more helpful early on in COVID, just like the HCQ word and every other medication, except for the drug, that I've been following, which is being compared to remdesivir in an NIH funded trial. And let me see if I can actually pull that up right now. I do have my notes here. Hold on. Let me see. So I'm going to copy over the expanded access protocol for this. So this is the expanded access application for the right to try for the drug that I've been talking about, the RLF 100. But I'm also, let me see here. I want to get I have a whole bunch of links for this drug, but I now have a ton of note topics, because as I'm driving down the road, this is how is it this one? This is all my interviews. I will find them and try to attach them to this post when I get done, because I really want people to be able to reference this because it's really important information, for the RLF 100. Let me, NeuroRx. Their stock, went soaring, but not the, not, not the one for RL for Relief Therapeutics. Relief Therapeutics holds the patent. They are licensed through NeuroRx in the United States. So this is the drug company here. NeuroRx is the pharmaceutical company in the United States, who is marketing this drug. Let's see here, I have another question. Is there a big difference between SARS and SARS-2? Yes and no. It behaves a lot in the same manner, but it has evolved to this, which is why we weren't completely prepared. They like to say that, "Oh, we've been trying this vaccine on SARS and whatnot for the past 10 years," but there's a reason there's no vaccine for all that. It's because it mutates too quickly. Um, so they do have a lot of resemblance. They are in a family, but this is like another generation of that family. I think one of the ways that it was explained best was that, like, with the coronavirus, say, like, you have the last name of Smith, but then you have uncles and aunts on, all down the family tree with the same last name, but they're in different branches of the family, I guess is the best way to explain it. So they do have some qualities of one another, but they also develop their own, if a family chain of things that happen. That's the best way to explain this and to make it make sense. I know there's a lot of people looking at the news right now going, "Make it make sense. Please just make it make sense." And none of it makes sense. And honestly, until we find the key that ties people having long haul a COVID and side effects from the vaccine, there's obviously a common denominator in these folks. Some people are more at risk. I think we need to find out what that is before we start pushing vaccines and treatments on people that they don't want. Let's look for what is the underlying a common denominator here, because obviously some people are getting a lot sicker than others for a reason. Yeah, it would be like a different strain of the flu. Yeah, and here's what people don't realize right now. Everything that we're hearing about the Delta, the UK, this Lambda, the Mu, these are all variants of the same strain. Once this mutates to jump strains like the flu has done, but normally it takes, after a vaccine is developed, about 5 years for a virus to jump a strain completely. If this jumps strain before it's under control, we are going to have a whole world of other problems. So I I hear a lot of people use the term interchangeably, and they are not interchangeable. A variant is just a variant of the original strain. We are not in a completely different strain of SARS-CoV-2 yet. It's still the original strain, but we're working on variants of that original strain, if that makes sense. With the flu shot, the reason it's not effective every year is sometimes we don't predict which is going to be the predominant strain that year. We have to look at seasonal patterns in other countries, and we have to look and see what their a lot of times we look to Australia, I believe, because they're opposite us. We're going into winter. I think they're going into summer. So we kind of look at what their patterns were, and we try to predict what's going to happen. And sometimes we're wrong. So there could be several different flu strains to choose from, and that's when they make their flu vaccine towards that particular strain. So that's why it's not always really highly effective. By the time that the end of flu season gets here, sometimes it's as little as a 30% effective. So We don't even have a predominant flu vaccine. We really have to be on our game with science every year. The COVID, what I am seeing is it not becoming as severe in the ICU. I'm not seeing people as cognitively impaired. I'm seeing more positive outcomes. I'm seeing people go home. I was not seeing that up to this point. I am seeing people discharged out of the ICU, off of ventilators, and going home. So, and they're not there for when I was in Dallas in February, there was a young guy there on high flow still, very high amounts of oxygen on the high flow and wearing a CPAP at night. 35 days later, still locked up in his hospital room, wishing he could order Uber Eats because our food sucks. These people are quite literally solitary confined, and they make them stay in this room until they test negative. Well, you can shed the virus inactively for 6 weeks, depending on how severely you're infected. So, to keep somebody confined to a hospital room, that's why it's nice that Texas has finally started to allow visitors. But now it appears that hospitals like Laredo are trying to impede the visitors and the say so that they have in their loved ones' care. There are several families who have complained about this particular doctor's care. Same type of care, same problems. They are causing these long injuries. Peeps of 18 and 20 are unheard of. This is not okay. This is not a standard of care on the front lines. It's very inexperienced small hospitals that are doing this. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is not what it's like across the front lines. So we use and I have an argument with my patients all the damn time. They think that there's some other kind of oxygen device because they don't want this thing blowing up their nose, or they don't want this mask strapped to their face. I have nothing else for you. It's uncomfortable. It's miserable. Would I ever tell you that you did this to yourself because you're not vaccinated? Fuck no. No, I would not say that. No. We all know the choices that we can make. We all know what we can do. And if that's a choice that you want to make, that is your freedom of choice. It's your medical freedom. I would never hold that above your head for not going to get a jab you that I even question its long-term efficacy. We're not seeing it. We're not. You are not protected from each other with that jab. You're not. I don't know where this narrative is coming from, that it's patriotic and you're protecting each other. You're not. The only thing that it can do is help reduce the severity of your symptoms. It does not stop the spread from anybody. You can still carry it with the jab, with not the jab. It doesn't matter. So stop being mean to people. What are your thoughts on the monoclonal infusions before they get to the point of needing hospitalization? Great, if you can get them now. The Biden administration just recently cut the supply to a lot of the southern states where the outbreaks are happening due to the low vaccination rates. So now he's also cutting the treatment options to these people. Great outcome. No. So now there's like 70% less in Texas. One of the young ladies I'm talking to in Tennessee, their loved one of the doctors was wanting to get that. These are synthetically made, so they are not like you are getting the antibody like from mRNA or anything like that. It is a synthetically made a protein. Um, and it's one that's highly effective. We tried the convalescent plasma. It was not working. What they did was they isolated one of the antibodies that they could show was helping. And it's like a super cocktail of this particular antibody. Go for it. My ex and his wife had it, and it probably helped them get better. We have a governor here in Texas last July made this a lot easier to get. Trump had it when he got sick. Abbott had it when he got sick. It probably does help you get better early on. All these treatment options that we have need to be given early on. A lot of them should have been started in the outpatient setting, like when we were all raising hell about the HCQ word. All these treatments were done in the hospital. They should have been done in the outpatient setting. Um, so let's see here. Yes, so he's taking treatment away from people who, yeah, he's supposed to be helping. Um, Obviously, your heavily vaccinated states probably don't need all those extra monoclonals. And what you're going to start seeing here is the spike that's going to start happening up in the north, in the Midwest, because we're going indoors. It's becoming cold out. So you guys are all going to start going indoors. You're going to start seeing the spikes, and a lot of those states are vaccinated. You're still going to see a climb in numbers. Um, don't be surprised. It's going to be another I told you so. And I hate to do that. I am not that person. I don't like to do that. Um, so, but that's what we're going to see. And I told you a month and a half, 2 months ago that this was going to spike. It would start to decline in September down here. And sure as shit, last week it started to drop significantly in our hospitals in Texas. So it's going to alleviate very, very quickly here. And we're going to go into our cold and flu season. We're probably going to get nailed with more RSV. Yes, adults can get RSV. They can be complicated with corticosteroids that we want to use to treat COVID with. So we have to look at that. It can cause some issues. So these things can overlap, but we have to be careful with throwing meds. And that's what I understand, that we like to do our research. And sometimes Google is a great thing, but it's also your enemy. When I look at somebody's loved one's numbers, it's not just ventilator settings. I want to know the blood gas. I want to know vital signs. What medications are they on? Because if we're on blood pressure medications, that can affect a number of things on what happens. You know, your heart and lungs are a whole pumping system. So if the heart's impaired, it's going to affect oxygenation. So there's a whole giant picture that needs to be painted. So I try to answer the questions the best I can. I'm not avoiding things. The doctor in Laredo was avoiding things not to tell a patient's loved one what meds they're on. That's not acceptable. None of that is ever acceptable. I don't believe the vax numbers either, because I shared a great video from the Be the Change Network. You can go back on mine, or you can find it on theirs, on why the numbers on this viral video were wrong. Actually, let me see if I can even find it. I might be able to go back here very quickly and share it in the comments. Anthony does a lot of work, man. I don't know how he even gets any rest. He is constantly doing research, constantly, constantly, constantly. He has a great video he did the other day. I guess they went and I did not watch the Pfizer advisory council, but I guess why the booster didn't get approval was they brought results of like 300 people for 2.5 months for booster information. You know, that's not exactly great information. That's not helpful. That's definitely not enough numbers to even say that, hey, you know, out of all these people, you're going to take 300 out of all these ones that were jabbed, and that's all you're going to use for your freaking data. That's not even, no. Hang on a second. I'm trying to find, he's got so much. Trying to remember when this, right here. Here it is. This is a great video. He walks you through the girl's viral video, and then he also shows you why the math is wrong and explains why the people don't understand how easy it is to manipulate statistics. It's all based on what numbers you use, and you're leaving out the variable of time. You have to compound those numbers, just like the credit card companies compound our interest daily. How you compound those numbers over time makes a big difference in how you extrapolate them forward. So they're leaving out the variable of time, which makes these numbers really tiny, and you have to factor in time. And when you do that, the numbers get very large very quickly. So I don't believe the numbers either. So there's a great video on this girl's viral video on her math, and she's a very angry human being. Her name's Heidi or something. Anthony's trying to get her on the show to discuss why her math is wrong, but she seems like one of those people who's just never going to be wrong. Um, oh, awesome. That makes me happy to hear, Barbara. Hey, the military is kicking all the people. Oh, Hunter. Hey. So Hunter is the son of one of the spouses that I helped support through her separation from her military spouse. So we all have a lot in common here, but he is one of the soldiers affected by get the jab or we're dishonorably discharging you. I do know Hunter. Let's see, he says the military is kicking out all the people not getting vaccines in an expedited process, and we're looking at facing general, other than honorable discharge, losing all of our benefits. Thoughts? I know there's a lot of soldiers with you. I'm watching viral TikToks, a lot of airborne soldiers. We're losing officers in the military. I'm expecting about 33% of our military to be discharged over this. My thoughts are we're leaving ourselves open to a wide open terrorist attack. There needs to be pushback against the government for this because the military that we are going to be left with as a result of this, oh God, it's full of millennials who don't have a clue as to what a terrorist. I mean, a lot of these kids were just babies when 9/11 happened. They don't have a clue what we are fighting over vaccines, mass politics within this country, and we are kicking out and removing benefits from soldiers who do not want to get this vaccine. They fight for our freedoms, and we should be fighting for theirs. This is something that should not be forced upon anybody. I'm really sorry, Hunter. Just know that you have a lot of people standing behind you, and I do see that in the future there's probably going to be a lot of pushback over this. You probably will see your benefits in the future. Right now, it's a threat that's very real, and they use fear and intimidation to control. Classic military and government behavior. We do need to stand up. I know you have a lot of backing from first responders. There are a lot of movements going on across the country on social media to get involved, to stand up against this. I highly recommend that you do. You already have a disability case against them. I don't want to get too much into his medical, but they're really screwing him over. And follow your mom's advice that I gave her on getting medical backup outside of military doctors for what you have going on because you're going to need it. You do have a way to get your benefits that way. That less than honorable discharge in the future. A lot of people in the civilian world are already hiding their military background. A lot of they're being discriminated against because they don't want to deal with veteran problems, or there's not a skill set for them in the civilian world in the employer's mind, and they're looked over for jobs. So I really wouldn't be too upset for the other than honorable discharge. They do put a codes on the bottom of the DD 214. And I'm sure any employer that you talk to that's, I stood up for my rights and not to get the vaccine, you're any patriotic employer would be happy to have you. So we have a huge dilemma in this country right now, on more than just one level. It's more than just medical freedom. We are leaving ourselves very weak and open to attack because of the situation that we are putting our soldiers in to make this choice as to keep a very low paying job, okay, because our soldiers already get paid shit to defend this country. And then they have to fight for their benefits when they get out, and now they have these ultimatums. So they're really getting the short end of the stick here. I don't agree with any of it. I do not agree with any of it. They're talking about making our lives, come on, scroll here. They're talking about making our lives a living hell until they kick us out. Furthermore, extra duty. Yeah, and of course, they made the punishments and smoking whatnot. Um, it's supposed to fit what the punish, like what the what would they call it in the military? The make the punishment fit the crime, I guess. But you're not supposed to do more than 10 push-ups or whatever. But now like they're becoming creative with like these continuous 2-minute push-ups, and that's counts as one. So the military gets very, very creative, and they do make these people's lives a living hell. I would say document the shit out of it, because you're going to have some stories to tell when y'all get out. Embrace the suck right now. You're going to have a lot of support when you get out. Sorry, I'm getting messages here that are sent privately. No, tonight, 60% on the vent, PEEP at 12, 90% oxygen, ABG from this morning. Good, no fever. Okay. See, this is the difference from what Jessie was getting versus what my friend's getting with her loved one. Tonight, the ventilator oxygen is 60%, a PEEP at 12, 90% oxygen, I think, on the monitor is what she's saying. ABG from this morning, 7.26, CO2, 33, which is great. PO2, 110, fantastic. You can actually turn down that oxygen, Aubrey. Telling her to join us. Sorry, my freaking leg is spasming. So what this, I'm going to kind of explain with her loved one's ABG. The 7.26 is the pH level. Your kidneys will excrete bicarb, but it takes 18 hours for that change to start happening to balance out that pH. Target range is a 7.4. That's a perfect pH balance in the blood. Your body will use the carbon dioxide in the respiratory system and the bicarb to help to balance that pH. So if you're hyperventilating and blowing off CO2, your body is going to react with the bicarb. Diabetic ketoacidosis, your body will blow off a lot of things to try and get rid of that CO2 buildup. So your body will respond differently. And we can tell a lot based on that blood gas as to like what the cause is, what your true oxygenation status is in the blood. That's what we're looking at with the PO2. Her loved one is 110. The doctors where I was at were very strict. They want it right around 60 or above. They don't want it sky high. If it's sky high like that at 110, you can turn that oxygen down. So that's actually a good thing, Aubrey. The oxygen can actually come down on your loved one. If they're at 60% now, I would probably at least try 55 and keep, because some people you move that oxygen a little bit and they're dropping, but they're probably I would want to know what the saturation is on the ABG of the blood, because it doesn't always match the monitor. A lot of times it can be 4 to 5% off, and we're trying to match the monitor saturation, and it's not accurate. The blood one is accurate. So the bicarb is 15. It's low. It should be 22 to 26. If your carbon dioxide was in range of 35 to 45 and your pH was balanced, then I would say it was compensated, but you're kind of mixed right now. The body is trying to respond, but it's better than a 7.0 something. So if the vent a PEEP is 12, I'm happy with that. That's a conservative, that's about as much PEEP as I would honestly feel comfortable doing. No more than 15. I mean, 18, that for that one loved one in Laredo right now is terrible. So I would honestly be happy with this gas. I mean, it's not beautiful, but it's not absolutely terrible either. I have seen far worse, but I would want to see the oxygen demands it keep coming down. But along with this, I would also want to know all of the vent settings, the respiratory rate that has direct effect on the carbon dioxide that's retained or blown off, the volume of air that they're getting, or what we call a tidal volume, your PEEP and your oxygen, and also what mode of ventilation that they're using. Is it volume control, VC plus or PRVC? Is it pressure control? And if so, what is the pressures? So there's a lot to those numbers that I need when I'm looking at a whole clinical picture. And I understand the pain in the ass doctor's frustration in Laredo, when they're asking for numbers and saying, oh, you wouldn't understand. I would if you gave me all of the numbers so the people who I'm asking can better explain these things. And if you would answer the questions that we're asking, that the loved ones are asking you to answer, it's really, really important for that. How to lie with statistics. Yes. And I have talked about this, Barbara, for months. We can lie with statistics so damn easy. It is so freaking easy to lie with statistics. It all depends on what numbers you're using, where you're getting your data from, what numbers are you mixing in here, what are they supposed to be reflecting, are you putting in the proper variables, are you including time, are you including all these other factors? Probably not. And it's just like when we are doing the study, they're only looking for immediate side effects. So like redness and swelling at the injection site, they're not looking for blood clots on the vaccine, guys. If you look at the study, there's nothing being studied about that. They're just logging that in VAERS right now. So when you look at these long-term studies and you look at the Moderna and the AstraZeneca, you go to the actual study and you see what they're testing. Go to that clinicaltrials.gov website, look up the clinical trial for whatever it is you're looking for, and go directly to the trial. And it will tell you exactly the questions, who's included in the study and who's not included. There's a lot of people not included in these studies, a lot of them. They're being included in sub-studies. Okay, well, what's the population of those sub-studies? What you really have to look at the numbers, and they're not being reflected accurately. I'm going to tell you that. I have to pick up my life. My 1-year-old, this is more from Hunter. I'm going to put this on the screen. I have to pick up my life, my 1-year-old, my wife with nothing, and move home and try to scrounge up work and school. I'm fighting at the moment. Eventually, you need to. And you are welcome to start building on mine. That's how your mom found me, with my Journey of a Combat Veteran Spouse page. I'm going to start opening it up to the veterans and soldiers who are going through this. So you will have a platform, and you'd be more than happy to build your own through my page. You guys are going through a lot of shit. I mean, this is a war that you never thought you'd have to fight, for your own medical freedoms and for your own freedom that you fought for, to not have to. This is like a concentration camp. It truly is. Get the jab or else, and you're being fed this narrative that it's a patriotic thing to do to protect each other from one another, and there's no protection from one another. It's not stopping the spread. Education is the most important thing we can do right now. Educate, educate, educate. If we start pushing back with fear and violence and all that, it's just going to give them the ammunition that they're looking for. If we would have started off educating in the beginning, we would not be in this mess that we're in right now. My dad, after 35 years in the Coast Guard, had a very hard time finding employment after his service. Right now, honestly, is the time to be making a lot of changes in your career, in education, in everything right now. There's a lot of companies who are standing behind our veterans and soldiers and not getting this. They are happy to employ you. So we already have a weakened workforce because we can't get people to come back to work. People are not going to come back to work because they feel safe because other people got the jab. No, quite the opposite. They do not feel safe coming to work. Healthcare workers don't even feel safe coming to work because we're being threatened with violence. They've had to increase security. So But now is the time to grab a hold of these opportunities. You do have marketable skills that you have learned in the military, even if you're jumping out of planes and killing people. You do have skills that you can market in different ways to an employer who is willing to take their chance on you. Use this as a great opportunity to build a network of people because they are out there. This is the time. Build a platform, reach out because they're, especially on TikTok, man, there are employers out there reaching out to these soldiers and offering them jobs post service. Get in the comments on TikTok. Seriously, like I cannot believe the support that I'm finding on that platform. Jesse found support built through that platform. You need to use all the platforms available at your disposal right now and start networking with other soldiers going through the same thing. I just read where my hometown, Decatur, Ohio, or excuse me, Decatur, Texas. Sorry, that's a bad word. Ohio. Hospitals allowing visitors one at a time, even for COVID patients. Yes, that started with the House bill that Governor Abbott passed. I gave her the information on the medicine for that I've been following, and she said but again, still didn't seem interested in the medicine because people don't understand RLF 100. They've not been following it. They've never heard of it. They think it's just something else. And they're not even willing to open up the data on this damn drug. And it's being compared to remdesivir in an NIH funded trial. So until these doctors get harassed by this drug, you're not going to have them familiar with it. You have to harass them about it. But because of the House bill that Governor Abbott passed, you are now allowed one visitor. And the hospital I was at, they made you come in and sign a waiver. You had to bring your own N95. Some hospitals are providing the mask because they want you to wear their mask. You have to watch a video and then you get whatever remainder of time with your loved one, which is the way it should be. That's the way it should have been from the freaking beginning. Why we had to pass laws to do this is beyond me. I always go back to there is a difference of with and from. Yes, 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 yes. Don't give up, Hunter. Do not. You have to join with other soldiers. Reddit is a great area. I mean, you have to band together on this. You really do. There are whole brigades that are like just walking out. I mean, when you lose 33 to 50%, they're like, nope, we're all leaving. When they start looking at these numbers, sergeant majors are leaving. You know, it's like when you have high ranking officials and, you know, all these experienced soldiers leaving, they are an asset that the military really can't afford to fucking lose. They spent all these years training these folks to have them turn around and walk away. They can't afford it. And that's why they need to stick together because the military is losing all that money in asset and training, walking out the door over this poke. There's power in numbers, guys. You have to look at the end result. Good night, Barbara. Love that clinical trial site. I like this StreamYard app. I can put these on the screen for everybody to see. If you don't know about it, to advocate at the hospital, be prepared. I'm already talking to my hospital about participating in emergency use Aviptadil. Okay, Aubrey, you see what Debbie's doing. You just have to talk to the patient advocate, sit down, call a patient family meeting, bring the information, the data with you. You have to advocate and push hard because what's important about this medication is that it's got the best results when given while on the high flow before we progress to the ventilator. Because what they changed in part of the study from what they did at Houston Methodist was instead of the ventilator patients, they were focusing on early intervention, like with the high flow and on BiPAP. So that's when the results went up to like 81% survivability from this, from severe respiratory failure from COVID. We don't have anything for that. It was like 70% off the ventilator. So those are still significant numbers. I would rather have 70% of 600,000 people alive than 600,000 dead, if you look at it that way. The ones that would have passed away would have been the ones with the worst pre-existing conditions. Um, and we would be saving children with a very safe medication. Yeah, not remdesivir. Remdesivir is not safe. It destroys the kidneys. Him, you don't need to wear your mask. I'm, oh, this, this, this fucking comment right here. Oh, you don't need to wear your mask. I'm vaccinated. My husband tells me, no thanks. I'm going to, yes, wear your mask. The vaccine does not stop the spread. This is an ignorant thought process. And this is what this administration is pushing. You are not safe just because you're vaccinated. You're safe from severe symptoms, but you are not safe from not getting it. You are not safe. There's a doctor that I follow on TikTok under Beach Jam 10. She's a pediatric ER doc. One of her kids got it. So they're all wearing masks around the house. And now there's another one that's positive. They're vaccinated, but the kids aren't. And they can still spread it to people at work. So she's an ER doc. So, you can still take it to work and spread it even if you're not symptomatic. Like, fuck, this is not what was supposed to happen here. You were supposed to be safe and secure and knowing that I got the vaccine and I'm not going to infect anybody and I'm not going to get severely sick. And none of these things are happening. You're still transmitting it. The only thing that's happening is you might not get severely sick, but we got 15% of people vaccinated in Michigan dying who are in the hospital. So that's not a reassuring number. That's not less than 1% dying. How many more, and then you only bring 300 people's worth of data. That tells me you cherry pick some data in support of booster shots. That's why the FDA shot you down. But now there's like trying to get for children 12 and under. There is something making people prone to blood clots, whether or not you have COVID or if you have the vaccine. And I would like to know what that is first before we go pushing this onto people. I think that's an important thing to know because if it's the PF4, then maybe we should be testing people for that before, it's a very simple test that we can do before we go giving people this. I mean, it's just a thought, but if a platelet factor is a huge, thing, let's test people for it before we give them the vax. There's a lot of things that we could be doing and a lot of ways that we could be handling this instead of mass chaos and hate and division and a mass exodus of our military. And now we are going to have a weakened, and ask any veteran and soldier, they're going to tell you we are putting ourselves at high risk right now. People are not looking at the long range picture of opening ourselves up for another terrorist attack. And we just brought a bunch of Afghans into the country who are not vetted that are disappearing from military bases in Ubers. Yeah. And we have no track of them even coming over here. And we have no idea where they're at now. So, and people are stupid who think, oh, we vetted them before we got on the plane. No, we didn't. The vetting process takes a while. It's not easy. And it's not something that can be done on an airfield in the middle of Afghanistan in a war zone. So ISIS is already attacking the Taliban. And for people who think that those two are the same, no, they are not. So we have a lot of things to learn about terrorism. And then we have domestic homegrown terrorists. And yeah. So we have a huge problem on our hands, folks, while we're all fighting over all this crap. We don't need to do that. Yes, networking right now is going to be our big thing. Now that I'm sitting still, I'm probably going to work on downloading those videos that I wanted to get on to the Reddit and Rumbles, and I'll share all that before I get booted off the main platforms again with my censorship problems. But that way you can find me, because I will go to any platform with the information. And I would also like to work on the rest of the TikTok for RLF 100 with more data. So yeah, I'm doing that, filling out my advanced care directive and talking to the doc about RLF just in case. I hope not, but you do need to be prepared. You do need to talk to doctors, even your primary care doctors. Bring this information to them, because your primary care doctor should be in communication with your intensive care doctor in the hospital. So if you can at least get one of your doctors to listen, if something does happen, at least they're aware of another option. and they can start talking to other medical professionals, because that is part of the problem with this, is that the information is just not being shared. It's not being, like, the word ivermectin is out there in front of everybody. Doctors in the hospital are prescribing it because it's in people's faces. Aviptadil, Zysami, RLF 100, it's not in people's faces. The only way it's going to get there is by putting it there. More talk about it. Drop it in the comments on news sites. Let people be aware. You do not understand how many doctors don't comment. My brother has a throwaway profile. It's not even listed as a doctor, but he's in comments reading, because that's where they pick up things. So I had a doctor find my YouTube information on the RLF 100 in Florida and reach out to me, and we talked on the phone. So it does get out there. We just have to, it's more word of mouth right now. It's really super important. Yeah, early intervention on biosphere. That's exactly the info I was looking for. Early intervention is key with this. Huge, 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 huge. That's the best time for all of this. The BiPAP, Debbie, what was the question on the BiPAP specifically, honey? I don't like to torture my patients with it unless absolutely necessary, because they're on it for a long time. It's uncomfortable. You get skin breakdown. A lot of these patients are being locked in the room, and their oxygen levels are not being hooked to a continuous monitor. They're only having their vitals checked every 4 hours, and they're knocking off the oxygen. And I go in there and find them at like 81% on room air. They're completely confused. I don't need them falling out of bed. There's no fall alarm. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at with the way people are being cared for. We don't have the setups for the continuous monitoring. That's why I like the field areas. That way you have a central location, like a command center that, that freaking asshole nurse, Luana Rivers, last year that I went after. They're killing people. They're just throwing them in this pit to die. No, they were putting them in this pit because it was, all the patients were around, and the nurses station, we could have a visual on everybody's monitor. We can see if they're pulling off oxygen. You can't do that if they're at a nurse's station with doors closed, because we don't have a negative pressure floor to where the doors can be open. They have to be closed. So it puts these patients at risk, and I have a problem with that. Okay, the question was, when is the Aviptadil most helpful with the BiPAP? Early on, before we proceed to respiratory failure. Any intervention before we hit respiratory failure, before damage, is great, while they're on high flow and BiPAP, and before it progresses downhill to extremely high demands and days of it being on there. Early intervention is key. The sooner we can get them on that while they're on those devices, the better. So before we progress, now that's not to say that we can't use this drug while on a ventilator. It would have a better outcome than the baricitinib that we're using, than the monoclonals that we're using, than ivermectin, than anything that we're using right now. This would be better. It has a better outcome. But early on, while we're still on high flow and BiPAP, time is when that is key. That's the best time to use that drug. Other nations are laughing at our government's stupidity and think we are weak. Biden needs to go. Sorry. No, I understand completely. Our mess in Del Rio, Texas, down here, for those of us who haven't seen, people have a severe misconception about the support of illegal immigration down here. The Hispanics down here on the border do not support this type of immigration. They are like, if you read the comments to the local news, it's like, build the freaking fence. And that's why Abbott is continuing to build the fence. They are setting aside a lot of money in our taxes and funding to go to finish that wall. We need it, quite obviously. It's a safety issue here. And these are Haitians. There's not even really anybody from Mexico. There's very few Mexicans. Mexico is not the problem. They're trying to help quell the floodgates as well. When the Trump policies went into effect, it really stopped a lot of problems down here. They have had to shut down the border crossing in Laredo to go help. I mean, they're having to redirect all these different border patrol agents sheriff's departments to stop this influx of 10,000 fucking immigrants is a lot of people, folks. Um, Especially, it's still hot outside. It's not cold in Texas. Like, I'm really happy to be wearing a hat and snuggled in Alaska, but it's not like that in Texas. It's pretty damn miserable there still. This is, and we have people crossing the Rio Grande who can't swim. It's still raining. There's floods. People are dying. Um, this is a humanitarian thing, but we can't help everybody, and let alone we can't help ourselves. So we really have to look at these things. Let's help our homeless veterans. We have a hell of a homeless population problem in this freaking country. I want to see those people taken care of first before we start harboring asylum. Now they're asking for people to voluntarily take in these Afghans that are unvetted for host families, like they're foreign exchange students. I have some questions. I want to see papers. I want to see background checks. I want to see that these people are who they say they are, and they have no history with working with the Taliban and ISIS over there. Got questions. We really have to be careful. Yeah, so work with your PCP. At least let them know what your wishes are, so that way if something happens to you, make them aware of these freaking treatment options, because talking about these things within the medical community, that's why I was really upset for that girl, to be like, "Oh, you can't talk about that to the travelers. That's not gonna happen." Yeah, well, I'm not gonna work here anymore. It doesn't have anything to do with my quality as a respiratory therapist. I do really good work, talk to my patients. People who have met me for 5 minutes and think they know what my job is just piss me the fuck off. That tells me what a piece of crap nurse that they really are, or, doctor or whatever. We are not just button pushers. We are not, no, we are very skilled in what we do. Especially when we focus on critical care. And that's all I've been doing since I got into this trauma and critical care. So we have to know a lot about the human body versus just respiratory stuff. I get asked questions about all sorts of things. I was walking into the home care office one day and I had one of the housekeepers ask me if I thought a rash was staph. Yes, and please go have that checked out. That's not for me to touch, and don't touch people with that. That's contagious. But yeah, so we see a lot, we hear a lot. I see things I probably never want to see again. Don't put things in crevices where they don't belong. Please, please. That's all I have to say on that one. But keep the questions coming. But if you're going to send anything, like, and you want it, the more details I have, the better. The vent setting with the volume, the rate, the PEEP, and the oxygen levels, the most recent ABG, medications that they're on, vital signs. Those are all really important. But just please don't expect anything quickly to happen with COVID. Your loved one is just, this is not the flu. This is not the damn flu. You are not going to get over this like the flu. A lot of people still have a lot of pressure in the chest and chest discomfort, swelling. Thank you, Brittany. Lots of inflammation. And so it causes a lot of discomfort. There's not any easy relief to that. We have people use the incentive spirometer, but what's causing it is that inflammation. And it's quite literally down to the cellular level. It's causing this inflammatory response in the cells. And I'm seeing lumps on people. My friend Misty, she has been, this girl has had lumps appear on her rib cage. And when they do the imaging, there's nothing there, but you can quite literally see the lump on the skin. You can touch it, you can feel it, and it's like all the way down to the cells. Well, that's happening in the lung tissue. The lungs, if you were to unfold the lung tissue, it would be the length of a tennis court. That's how much tissue there is in the lungs. So you have to remember all that inflammation. And another big question is with the dexamethasone and a steroid. You don't want it right away. A steroid too early can actually cause problems. A steroid at the right time when we start to see some problems and a lack of oxygen. You don't just want to give the dexamethasone to everybody. You want to give it to people who are starting to show a drop in oxygen saturation, because given too early in those people, it can cause a problem. So that's a hey, Maddie. So that's a huge one there now. I'm seeing a lot of people are liking the YouTube link better. So I'm definitely going to keep streaming to all of these platforms. I'm going to be using StreamYard a lot more often. I have to thank Russo for that. I usually use the Streamlabs, but that's if I'm going to do different types of streaming. So I guess I'm going to have to do both. But we're going to be doing a lot more. I'm going to try to work on Ryan's video this week so I can get more going on my Journey of a Combat Veteran Spouse page, because I really want to hear from the soldiers who are being processed out. I want to hear from the veterans as to what they're dealing with. Sorry, I'm trying to block this light out. And so I really want to be doing a lot more when I get back. Steroid. Yes, the dexamethasone. This one, the right time is when you start to see a drop in the oxygen levels, not just because you got sick with COVID and your doctor. There's this misconception in healthcare that if we don't prescribe something, that we're not doing enough. Sometimes nothing is something. And that's sometimes what you need to be doing. Z-Packs for everybody is not the freaking answer. Z-Packs and zinc and steroids for everybody who's gotten COVID is not the answer. These things can actually cause problems. This dude needs to block user. Goodbye, dude. Trolls. But the steroid is when we start to see an impairment in the ability to breathe, shortness of breath, like severe shortness of breath, decrease in oxygen levels, like at that point in time, not just because you got diagnosed and we're prescribing it for everybody. So, but definitely look that up, because we're not just giving Dex to everybody, and I'm seeing it freely given by a lot of doctors in the outpatient practice. And if it's not needed, we shouldn't be giving it. Kind of like fucking albuterol. Chuck Norris tears is what we call albuterol. Prevent it all. It does not. It does not help with congestive heart failure. It does not magically open the airways. It does not absorb congestive heart failure fluid. What albuterol does is it relaxes the smooth muscle on the outside of the airway. So if you are suffering bronchoconstriction from asthma, COPD, it'll reduce the muscle tension on the outside of the airway. It does not just go, hey, we're going to open the airways. Contrary to what this guy is a pain in the ass. Melatonin. Melatonin is a great antioxidant. Doris Lowe. I'm going to actually go get some of her information here real quick. Let me go get her page. Doris has done a ton of research to the point where scientists are actually crediting her work in theirs. She has done a lot of research on the melatonin and ascorbic acid, which is a form of vitamin C. Here we go. I shared this one on my page a couple days ago, but I'm going to share this again. Let me actually open it up, because I am not on my phone, so things share differently. So this is a link to Doris with the melatonin and the ascorbic acid and some of her research. She is an awesome human being with her research and her information behind it. She is a great resource to follow. On her original paper, there's like almost 300 sources. This woman plays piano for a living, and she loves solving puzzles, and we need more of her in healthcare, because questions like hers and her methods of finding the answer are what we need. So she is an amazing human being. I highly advise, if you want anybody credible on that type of research, to follow her. But we use melatonin in the hospital. That's a very, very, very common one. I just want to make sure that we deleted all these troll messages. Okay. I'm really happy with the way StreamYard works. I can control everything from here. But Doris is great. She's very interactive with her audience. It's to the point where she actually had to cut some people off on her private group because it is growing so big. But she has a website, and that's what I shared. You can follow all the work on her website. And I would highly recommend her. She has spoken at medical conferences. So, yes, I do. Let's see here. My youngest, 11, is having major anxiety since having COVID, even though his case was extremely mild. Do you have any thoughts while this might be? Probably the chest tightness. Anytime you can't breathe, you have to figure, like anytime anybody's having it, it's very similar to an asthma attack feeling. It's a constriction in the chest that you just can't seem to get relief from. And a lot of people will say that it fluctuates. It will come and go. They'll stand up and they'll get really short of breath and then they'll be fine. They'll move for a while and then they'll get short of breath, have to sit down, and then it will pass. These things will come and go, even in the children. And kids are a little bit less in tune with what's going on with their body because they just know how to be kids and they don't know how to really talk about what they're feeling. So the best thing to do is actually try to figure out what they were doing prior to the discomfort, write it down and look for patterns. Breathing techniques, slow meditative breathing, is very helpful to help relax. The best thing to do with kids is not use the word meditative. Just turn on some relaxation technique, a breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. You can do certain breath holds. You can get really good control of that anxiety feeling within a good 2 minutes of just controlled breathing. When I sub gym classes in school, we use these techniques and cognitive behavioral therapy in health class on the down low without calling it these things for the kids. And they respond very well to it. My son doesn't want to hear the word meditation, but if we work together and focus on breathing when we go to sleep, he passes right out. So I just have to sneak these things in. So it's probably the chest tightness. When you have a hard time breathing, it's scary for just about anybody. So I'll try to do more Q&As. Like if I get a lot of private messages or even the public messages that have a lot of good questions, I'd rather address them all as a whole because it'll answer a lot of questions for other people because I get a lot of the same question privately and it's just easier to address. And that way, if people want me to explain more in depth, I can. A lot of times it's hard to explain the concept in a text message. And it's just easier and less time consuming to do it this way. So, yeah, talk to the school guidance counselor about it, Brittany, that when he's having those episodes, try to just have him sit down and focus on his breathing because that's really probably he's getting all hyped up. When you get hyped up and you're around the kids and your adrenaline's pumping, everything constricts. And if he's already recovering from those inflammatory processes, it's probably affecting his breathing. So just relaxation techniques are really important because that'll relax the blood vessels and allow the blood to flow and make the breathing a lot easier. So it is really scary for some of the kiddos. It truly is. So unfortunately, the school year is going to suck. It's going to get worse up there. So up in the cold weather months areas for winter, our children are going to get hit pretty hard with this. So be expecting that. And we're going to have to work with the kiddos on some relief because they're freaking miserable with this. And it's going to spread. And so is RSV because we're wearing masks and the kids aren't exposed to the new virus. A lot of people, we had a lot of the rumors with the flu virus and why it wasn't prevalent last year. No, it didn't just disappear, but there's a lot of factors as to why the flu wasn't high. We don't know if a COVID's a more aggressive virus and it's like a survival of the fittest and it's affecting the host. We're also wearing masks, which the type of masks that everybody is wearing with the surgical mask, those are droplet precautions. That's what we wear with the flu. We don't wear, this is airborne. You really need to be wearing an N95 to stop the spread. You really do. Um, but the surgical mask is more for the flu. There's just a lot of different things. We're not all around each other. We're not going to school and spreading it. We're not going to work and spreading it everywhere. We're a little bit more diligent with cleaning. So there's a lot of factors as to why things aren't spreading as usual. A lot of things we can learn about being hygienic every cold and flu season. Yeah, we can really like stamp down the spread of the cold and flu period. If we just continue to practice these behaviors, we really wouldn't need that flu vaccine, now would we? This is teaching us a lot about hygiene and washing your damn hands. So give that a shot. I'm going to go try to find some food. I'm hungry. And let's see if there's any more questions I can answer here. Oh, there's some really interesting cloud form. Doug, quit crinkling everything down there. Stop crinkling.
What?
Quit crinkling the bag.
Sorry.
It's like a fucking water bottle in the background. All right, guys. I'm going to maybe go post some more pictures of crab. I don't know. We'll see where I wind up, but I'll try to keep y'all updated. I'm going to work on editing Ryan's video and getting the Reddit and everything uploaded. I have computer work to do today. So it's definitely a nice dreary day to stay inside and do it. So I'm going to take advantage of that. Go forage. Apparently there's a shortage on king crab, and Alaska's talking about banning all fishing like for a season to try and get all the animals like restocked. So I better go find some king crab while I can. I don't care if it's $100 for a pound and a half. Give it to me. It's worth it. They've earned it. All right, y'all.